Hello, and welcome back to the Dictatorship News Hour on Channel 20 News, a news segment where we provide you with an in-depth look at dictatorships from the 20th century. On this week's portion of the segment, we've been looking into fascist dictator Benito Mussolini and his rise to power. Today, we'll be breaking down the economic situation Italy was facing post-World War I, specifically from 1918 to 1920, and discussing how this gave Mussolini a unique opportunity. After the war, the nation was experiencing economic failure on a massive scale, and as a result, Italy turned into quite the chaotic scene with huge labor strikes, national debt, and inflation. I'm Ida Larson, and here we have Rachel Lauren. Thanks, Ida. So let's talk about where Italy really was economy-wise starting in 1918. With World War I drawing to a close, Italy was in serious debt. Although they were on the winning side of the war, they hadn't really won any battles, and they'd lost a lot of men and a lot of money. Among all involved in the war, Italy ranked 5th in total cost of participation. As you can see in the graph above, Italy's debt was increasing at a pretty steep rate in the second half of the war, and after the war, that rate just got higher, with a big jump in long-term debt between 1919 and 1920. In order to pay for this, Italy both printed money and took out 6 significant national loans, the first being in 1914 and the last in 1920. The last two, in 1918 and 1920, were 2 times and 10 times the amounts of the previous loans. So, as you can see, as more time is going by, things are just getting worse for Italy. These loans also forced Italian banks to give advancements to the government tax-free and resulted in massive inflation in the country. Immediately after the war, the lira, their national currency, was worth only 1/3 of its original value, and by 1920, it was worth only 1/6 of that value. Of course, with this inflation came an increase in cost of living as well as unemployment. Wages had fallen more than 35%. On top of all of that, 2 million soldiers had just returned from war looking for work. Those who had jobs felt they weren't being paid fairly. The people were extremely discontent. And so started the labor strikes, which were an extremely significant part of the economic and social climate in Italy post-World War I. The strikes, combined with rioting and looting across the country from 1919 to 1920, mostly took place over one 2-year period known as the Biennio Rosso, which translates to Red Biennium, or the Red 2 Years. I'm sure, of course, by now you're wondering where I am and why it's relevant to all this. I'm actually in Turin, Italy right now, where in April of 1919, Fiat factory workers were some of the first to carry out strikes and factory occupations demanding syndicalist control and workers' rights. I want to really quickly show some footage from these actual protests and riots. I'll be back right after that.
Esso mira al controllo totale delle fabbriche e alla conquista dello Stato. Il governo non è in grado di opporre un'adeguata resistenza a questo fenomeno. Nel settembre 1920 quasi andò sventolare sulle officine piemontesi, liguri e lombarde la bandiera rossa.
So, scenes like these spread quickly across northern Italy during the Biennio Rosso, and the movement really didn't even reach its maximum until August and September of 1920, which is where those clips come from. And I just want to note that in the more agricultural South, workers were also striking. This was essentially a nationwide movement. In fact, strikes threatened the entire harvest in the summer of 1920. So I'm standing on top of Fiat's factory in Lingotto, Turin, where there's actually a full test track on the roof, so it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, the factory where the occupations in Turin actually took place is no longer around. This one was built in 1923 though, and some architectural experts argue that the design of this factory was a deliberate response to the occupations that took place during the Biennio Rosso. Hopefully, this has given you guys a good idea of Italy's economic climate from 1918 to 1920. Now, back to Ida for a quick rundown of what all this meant for Mussolini and his rise to power. Thanks, Rachel. So, during this time period, Benito Mussolini is strategizing. He's looking for an in, a way to really gain the amount of power he needs to become the ruler of Italy. So, he takes advantage of this economic crisis. Clearly, Italy was pretty much in shambles at this point. This gave him the opportunity to use the idea of bringing order to chaos as his main platform, which obviously helped him gain support. His economic policy involved balancing the national budget and curbing inflation. Additionally, Mussolini had formed a makeshift army called the Black Shirts and was offering protection and help to members of the higher class and industrialists. His Black Shirts worked as strike breakers for the group, destroying trade unions and socialist groups. This gave Mussolini more of an in with the elites, and eventually led to him securing the role of prime minister and dictator of Italy in 1922. After becoming dictator, all remaining strikes and workers' unions were defeated as Italy transitioned into a fascist state. Thank you for tuning in to today's Dictatorship News Hour. Tomorrow, we'll be continuing our study of Mussolini by looking into military defeatism in Italy post-World War I. I'm Ida Larson, and this is Channel 20 News.